let's get into our discussion, which is hacking risk management. How do you create a baseline risk assessment?
I think the first thing you have to do is determine what your risk universe looks like. What risks do you have in your organization? What risks are out there that you need to take a look at and make sure that you cover everything from high-level tier one?
You can take one risk professional from one industry, one business, put that same person in a very different company, very different industry. The principles are still the same, but the actual application of the risk management framework, the risk management program is going to be different.
This one comes from John Mumford. How does a company develop its risk universe, and who is typically involved?
Depending upon what you're looking at, whether you're looking at it from an ERM side, an InfoSec side, departmental side, there's a lot of resources out there that kind of give you, I wouldn't say your risk universe, but a good example of risks that you can pull in and take a look at.
It's good to understand the stakeholders ahead of time. You know, who is this risk framework going to, or this risk management program going to serve, and how will they get benefit from it? Really being focused on that.
This comes from Michael. As a SaaS provider, how do you push back against audit requests by your customers, even though you work from a common framework and provide proof that you meet those framework requirements?
What we have been trying to do is develop redacted versions of various pieces of evidence. Ideally, we default to just maybe sharing, evidence or procedures or what have you on the screen with a customer.
We have Mike Wilkes who's the CISO of a security scorecard, who's joining us. What do you got for us, Michael?
How often do you guys see an inverted pyramid where there's like a team of 8 people that are in charge of governance of risk and 2 people that are actually doing the work?
Every operating model that I have seen for anything, whether that be like a church group, a community service group, a work group, there's always the 80-20 split.
This comes from Richard Rushing, who is the CISO over at Motorola Mobility, and he asks, how do you scale a risk assessment program?
I think what can work to speed that one up is quantifying 2 things. One is the level of the organization, what their impact is to you, and B, also understanding how much they probably have in place anyway.
Yeah, I love this question that just came in from Bob Henderson. How do you account for bias in risk assessments, especially cognitive bias, and how do you go about dealing with it?
Having a good set of criteria that was pre-agreed upon by the stakeholders on how you were ultimately going to score this risk. So if you have various vectors and then you've based the risk assessment, scored the risk assessment off of these weighted inputs, weighted criteria, don't be upset with the answer. And then that's ultimately what you're, communicating to the stakeholders.
Welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
Hire a designated risk acceptor so that important leaders don't need to tarnish their reputation by accepting risks.
I think it's a great idea because that person could get paid a lot of money for sitting around and just saying, yeah, I accept this risk and hope and pray nothing bad happens. And when something bad happens, you fire him, but he's made enough money that he can go live in the Bahamas for a while.
Let's get all the risks accepted under a single person so we don't really have to, dig too deep. And it ultimately will serve as a great catch-all for all the stuff we don't feel like dealing with right now.
Limit access to your risk registry to only your security team. Why do you want to do this?
If we just take this risk register off of people's reading list, and it's one less thing that they have to familiarize themselves with.
If it goes outside of what they manage typically or what they need to work on typically, they can bring that person in, teach them on that one situation, and then that person go back to their role.
A question from Scott Sheehan. When do you see risk assessment get in the way?
I've been in situations where we put more time into the deliverable than we do the assessment itself. And so there may have been a lot of things that we wanted to look deeper into. We had to cut that short so that we could build some deck or build some, presentation material.
I have seen risk assessment get in the way when they try to redefine what they're doing rather than using what they set up as their roadmap.
This question I like from Steve Giger. Do the ethics of customer privacy versus financial business risk ever become a struggle in risk assessment?
If you've set expectations with a customer that you're going to do something, regardless of what that is, in this case, I would argue that it's your obligation to meet that expectation first and foremost.
Eric Strassman asked this question. Would you consider it more dangerous to align to a bad risk management framework / program or to have none at all and assess risks on an ad hoc basis?
If it was me, rather than having something guiding me down the wrong side, I'd probably start to rely on subject matter experts in the world to really pull out what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and which way I should head.
Good question from Chase and Dutch. How do you socialize the idea of risk ownership throughout the enterprise, being taken seriously and gained as little as possible? And how do you suggest we solve for the more challenging issue for most companies, which is the understanding that the business leaders own all the risk and should treat it commensurate to other business risks?
I think it all starts with culture for that. What we've done is try to enhance our existing cyber training awareness program to include more general risk themed messages.
I think the trick is getting people to understand it's not just about the risk ownership, but it's about understanding how you're managing that risk.
I don't think that risk management is necessarily a super complex thing to conceptualize or understand or anything like that. The main thing is just having the soft skills and the temperament to work with cross-functional stakeholders and trying to find, common solutions to things.
When people identify things, gaps, vulnerabilities, et cetera, we have a tendency in the industry to capture those as risks. They're really not risks. They're control gaps. They're control vulnerabilities. You look at your risks, you make sure that your risk universe isn't changing, but you really try to drive through and manage and do the work at the control.